Welcome to another Introscope video. Today we are going over objects. So the definition of an object is it's basically an instance of a class. Now that may sound confusing, but we're going to go over classes later. But just know that under a class, so whenever you create a class, that class is going to have instances of it. So it's going to have things that represent that class. So the instances or the objects they carry certain behaviors and states. So to just give you an example, we have, let's say, a dog class right here. And whenever you create this dog class, you may or may not put objects in it. But when you put objects in this dog class, you're going to refer to those objects as dog objects. So those dogs can have, states such as breeds, sizes, ages, and colors, which are represented by the primitive data type variables. And they can also have certain behaviors such as eat, sleep, sit, and run, and those will be represented by methods. So just an overview, a class is basically a template for those objects, and these objects can invoke the certain methods and the certain variables to get the behaviors and the states out. So we went over the object. A class called dogs can have dog objects. This class has a method called eat, and this dog objects can invoke that method by basically just doing dog.eat. So we're going to go over how to basically return or get the dog to do certain actions later. Also, one thing to point out is many people get confused between objects and variables. So variables we already went over. They're basically containers that hold specific values of data, whether that be an int, a double, Boolean variable, like true or false, or a character. And then, on the other hand, objects are references to certain classes that can also hold specific values of attributes. And objects, they can contain variables such as ints. So later we're going to go over big integer objects, but that you'll probably go over that in the actual AP Computer Science course. And note that these objects can also change while they're running, so they are mutable. And these objects can also, which I stated earlier, they can hold certain variables such as wrapper classes, such as integers or strings. But you don't have to worry about that for now. The declaration and initialization is very important. So they're dependent on something called the class constructor, which I'll be going over in the class presentation video. And the constructor will have a parameter based on if it's default or not. So if it is not default, then it is going to have a parameter, and this data type is going to be passed into the method's argument. So the method's argument is basically right here we have this constructor right here, and this constructor will be just the access modifier will be public, and the class will be named pretzels, and the parameter will just be it can be like an int called nums, and then we'll go over the purpose of constructors later. So these values that go into the method's parentheses can then be used to initialize the object, and then to declare an object, you will basically in this line you will declare it by having the class name and then putting whatever name you want. I just chose name because for simplification purposes. And then equals, and then note the word new is very, very important. So the class name, then whatever name you want, equals new, and then the class name again, and then based on what the parameter is, you will want to insert a value that corresponds to that parameter. So in this case, it's an integer called nums, so we want to pass an integer. So let's say pretzel name equals new pretzel with a value of 6, so then the object now has a value of 6. Yay, pretzel. So yeah, this basically went over the most simple definition and things that you need to know for objects. It may sound a little confusing, but once you go over the method in class video, it'll make more sense. If you need more practice, we will definitely give you more practice on our Introscope page. Feel free to check out the guide and the practice page on the Introscope platform. And this object PowerPoint presentation is very, very important because it's going to help you with the last assignment that you will need to complete Intro to Computer Science, which is called the PET assignment. And that assignment is basically just it'll test your knowledge of classes. It'll test your knowledge of constructors, objects, methods, and that is actually a very, very the hardest concept to understand, in my opinion, for Intro to Computer Science. So, but if you just go over the practice problems, I think that you'll be on a good track to understand what you need for the PET assignment. So that is it for today, and we'll see you in the next video.